Greetings and salutations, and as you can see in the background, behind me, in my thing, that is a virtual console, and Battletoads recently came out for the Switch Virtual Console. So as we know, Battletoads is... I've always loved Battletoads, and it's a very difficult game. But this takes me back to just having a grand old time. And yes, I even have it set up with like the graininess, because you could set that up on the Switch as like one of the options. You could add like the CRT graininess. I didn't want to pick him up. There we go. Really? I charged him. It should have turned into a boot. There we go. Extra points. Not what I wanted. I'll take it. That's worth 5k. Nope. This just takes me back. This is one of those games that your parents would get you, and you'd sit there and be like, you'd be enjoying it, right, on like Christmas or your birthday, and then you realize just how hard the game is, and then you're kind of loathing it at the same time of loving it. It's just, it brings back memories. It's kind of like, it's no different than, say, like, Double Dragon, and I missed that, of course. Like, Double Dragon 2, those were great times. Oop. Really? Just off frame. Of course, everybody's favorite's coming up, the Turbo Tunnel. After the whole descent, you got the Turbo Tunnel. You know how you used to have those times back when you were a kid? Anybody that's old enough to remember. And your friends would be upset if you're using, like, power moves in a video game because they didn't know how to. And they'd be all, bent out of shape because, oh, don't use the power moves, Takes the fun out of the game. And then, you're playing Battletoads and it's like, nobody in their right mind was telling you not to use the power moves. They were instead telling you to use the power moves because the game was just that ridiculous. I know I can juggle those birds for extra points, and to use it to get 1-ups, I can't. I've tried multiple times. See? I just mistime it so bad. Alright, never mind, hold up. That was going pretty well. This is going pretty good. I hadn't played Battletoads in ages. Gotta be ready for anything. Oh, no, 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 no. Did not need to take the excess voltage. Everybody's favorite. Turbo tunnel time. It's still 5,000. It just takes longer to do it that way. It's so much easier to just... I'll take the HP loss, it's fine. Just the fact that the comical sized boot and the comical sized fist and the ram horns, I mean, it's got a charm to it that other games wouldn't have today. And that's kind of the one thing I like about retro gaming, is to have that little bit of charm to it. Of course, the turbo tunnel. I still want to make an Astroneer, not a video, because obviously I can't, because it'll be copywritten. But I want to make an Astroneer thing where I ride a slope or a slanted area that I create to this theme by using the paver. I will not be taking the... rubbish. I'll not be taking the warp. Just so you know. I love the turbo tunnel. I jumped it. And that big pillar in the middle. Then, of course, you got the point where you're coming up where you have to make the jumps yourself. That's after these, of course. I made that jump. Thank you very much. Oops. That was my bad. That one I'll take full responsibility for, 100%. Battletoads is just, it's one of those... It's just one of those really hard games. It's a joy to play. And, I mean, you take a look at, like... There are kids today that there's no way they would play this game. I jumped. There's not a chance they would play this game, because the kids today would be like, oh, I can't do it. I mean, realistically speaking, you know, you need faster reflexes on, say, Call of Duty, Battlefield, or Fortnite than you do in this game. Till things like that happen. You need faster reflexes in, like, Battlefield or Call of Duty than you do in this game. But yet, this game is harder. And I think it's because there's a genuine challenge to it. That it crops up and just bites people right in the rear end. It's fine. Or you can just miss like that. Oh, cool. Get more points that way. Double Dragon, I mean, when they made Battletoads Double Dragon for like the SNES, and even for the arcade, it wasn't the same. Like, you expected it to be... I think people, you know, players like me, people that remember the old Battletoads game, were like, oh yeah, Battletoads and Double Dragon, having them together at the same time, that's like, you know, milk and honey, peaches and cream, right? And chocolate and peanut butter. You know, just a common pairing you'd see. And then you play it and you're like, it's okay, but it's not what you were expecting. It's kind of like a letdown. Kind of like Double Dragon 3. Double Dragon 3 was an absolute disaster of a letdown for most players. Myself included. But it's just one of those things. You know, it's a phenomenon. That's what it is. It quite literally is a phenomenon. It's like the Castlevania series. The Castlevania series was a phenomenon in and of itself. Because you take a look at the original Castlevania, and people got used to a certain idea. And then in Castlevania 2, it completely rewrites the idea. And people didn't receive it very well. And rightfully so, because it was kind of a disaster. I went down below that. Never mind. It's fine. And then you didn't hear much from Castlevania. I think they had a third one on the NES, but... And then you see Super Castlevania hit on the SNES. And that game was just absolutely incredible. Castlevania 64 comes out, and that game was dreadful. Let's not go there. I was below that. This is the one thing I do like, I mean, about the Nintendo Switch that I wish the Sega would do. I think the Sega would make tons of money if they just did it. Which is sell another console and just have like a virtual console on it. If you know what I mean? That was the slowest impact ever. So I think they should just make a Sega console and just have some of the virtual console stuff on it. They said, oh, well, we'll never make a retro console. As a matter of fact, I saw that today on Twitter. And so I thought, well, if they don't make a retro console, they're kind of missing out. Don't kick the ice, you fool. Pick it up. Aha! Got it. Well, I took a snowball right to the face. But no, the Sega, Sega was just saying, oh, we're not going to make basically a vintage console. Okay. Well, that's kind of a shame. Because they say, they're basically effectively saying we don't deal in, retro consoles. We don't do retro gaming. I mean, retro gaming is incredible. And a lot of people wish to relive the halcyon days of what is effectively every single game they played as a kid. And I think Sega's losing a large share of a market by... That was foolish. By not doing that. That was doubly foolish. Not today. Never mind. Guess it is today. I was gonna say, not today, dirtbag, but I guess so. Oh, really? Wow. That was just foolish. Come on. Everybody could agree with me there. I jumped. Doesn't matter. We continue. But no, I think Sega's missing out on a large profit margin by not making a vintage console. Like, if they were to make a Genesis or well, not Master System. If they were to make a Genesis, well, yeah, you could make a Master System, I guess. Sega Master System might sell. Or it was called the Mega Drive, I believe, here, but it was called the Master System in Japan, I believe. I could be wrong on that. Anyway, they could sell those. And they would make a ton of money selling effectively vintage consoles. And not even just virtual consoles, like... Because they said, well, they wouldn't sell, like, miniature consoles. Really? That hit me? Are you kidding? Right into that snowball. Right into that one, too. This is where I start failing. Even harder than I did in the turbo tunnel, which I shouldn't have failed in the turbo tunnel, but guess what? Never doubt my ability to fail. Remember, nothing is foolproof to a sufficiently talented fool. You know, they say, like, old age and treachery beats youth and inexperience. That snowman was having none of me being up in his face. Ain't gonna see the end of Battletoads today, friends. You probably wouldn't see it with me playing anyway. I think maybe twice in my entire life did I get to the later levels in Battletoads. I mean, you have so many people today that want the vintage gaming and that want to actually sit down and play the older games whether they be with their kids, their grandkids, their, nieces, nephews, etc. They want that experience again. Some people want to just play the vintage games because they're sick and tired of modern gaming. And there's a lot to be sick and tired of in modern gaming. I mean, vintage gaming was not without its ills, that's for sure. She didn't have, like, microtransactions and, the worries of AI and stuff constantly going on, but you had other problems in vintage gaming. Bugs that couldn't be patched out. And other maladies in the game that just made the game incredibly difficult to play. But yet, okay. Checks out. Oh, all the way back here. See what I mean? Little things like that. I mean, never mind, that was on my... I didn't duck. It looked like I was on the platform, but apparently I was not. But that time I was, so... And I jumped too high. But you see what I mean about, like... I mean, there was a defeat screen there. I mean, come on. How many games have a defeat screen? Not many. But it's just one of those things. It's kind of like the minor joys to have in retro gaming. And there are ills, like I said, there are ills in retro gaming. One of which is, like, you saw me land on the platform, I go right through it and I die. Unit collision, like ledge collision. Stuff like that. If it was hard-coded into the game, where you're missing, like, you miss it by a hair and you're just down through and you're dead, there's no way they could patch that in later to make it ever so slightly simpler. But at the same time, it's just one of those things that you have to kind of grow to accept as like an artifact of the era. And looking back on it, it's easier to do so. But when you look at modern games, they can be like, oh wait, we found a bug here, and we found a bug here, so we can fix those by wheeling out a patch. This, not so much. And it gives it... It's a double-edged sword. It gives it its charm, but it gives it its ills. And as much as I love Battletoads, I don't see myself doing another 23 minutes of it or so. And I hope everybody enjoyed this video. I hope everybody enjoys Battletoads. And if you enjoy Battletoads and you have a Nintendo Switch Online or Nintendo Online account, it's free on the NES emulator thing that's on here on the Virtual Console. So it's free to get. It's free to play. Relive some of your youth with Battletoads. I know I did. I absolutely love this game. It's got a dear place in my heart. I think one of the latest places I made. You know the snake level where you have to climb up the snake, and then you have to do the Turbo Tunnel version 2 where you're... Hey, there goes my camera. When you're on the flying machine and you have to go through the Turbo Tunnel on like the little jet bike, the second Turbo Tunnel. That's the latest I made it in Battletoads at all. And then that was it. So, but I hope everybody enjoyed this video. I hope everybody has a fantastic evening, wonderful tomorrow, and as always, have a good one.